Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Well, at 12 o'clock, or for noon, at 12 o'clock, a little bit. Anyway, whatever noon is, we're supposed to stop learning Torah as a preparation for Tisha B'Av. And then tomorrow at noon, we can begin again. So let's finish this class and hope that before noon, Moshiach will announce his arrival and the base of Mikdash will come down from heaven, and miraculously things will change. One second. What's going on? Paul was here and I didn't let him in. 1 second. All right. So yesterday we learned about Shma Yisroel, right? This is the motto of Judaism. It's in this week's Torah portion. It's a sentence in this week's Torah portion. Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. And then it says, and you will love God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your might. And it really says you should love God with all of your hearts. Hello. Oh, there we go. Hello. Good morning, Paul. So if you remember yesterday, just to summarize a little bit what we learned yesterday, why does it say, first of all, 2 times God's name? Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. Why say it twice? Why not sufficient 1 time? Listen, Jews, God is our God. God is one. Number 2 question is, in the Bible, you'll see that it says, listen, Jews, God is our God, God is one, and you will love God with all of your heart. And the rabbis, when we say this every day, and it's a commandment from the Torah, Jewish people have to say it twice a day. There was a great rabbi called the Chida, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai. He was a pupil of the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, Rabbi Chaim ben Atar. And he said that non-Jews should say this also. Shma Yisroel. It's a sentence right over here in our Torah portion. Listen, so it says, listen, Jews, God is our God, God is one, and you should love God. That's a sentence. And the rabbis of the Great Assembly, this was like in the beginning of the Second Temple, so they stuck in a sentence that says, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto L'Olam V'Oed. They stuck with it. Okay, why did they do that? How could they stick a thing like that in? And why would they do it like that? And we say it every day. We accept it. Everybody accepts it. Also, the word ve'ahavta means it's a commandment to love, and it is also a promise. You will love God. Ve'ahavta in Hebrew grammar, the construction of a commandment and a promise is the same thing. In other words, you must love God. You commanded, and you will love God. It's a promise that it's going to happen. So both of them really don't make any sense. I mean, how can you command somebody to love something? Right? If the thing doesn't appeal to a person, so he's not going to love it. How can you command somebody? And even more, how can you promise that for sure you are going to love this thing? How can you promise someone that he's going to love something? Love is an emotion. Emotions have to be genuine. How can you promise someone? Okay, so I mean, one way, of course, you can promise it is if, like in the Olympics or something like that, it says you have to try to win and you will win, right? The guy goes a wink. It's rigged. The thing is rigged. It's already, well, this is also sort of rigged. The Jewish people automatically love God. Of course, here it's not a contest. We're not contesting against anyone. Eventually, the whole world is going to come to recognize God. That's what the sentence means. Listen, Jews, God is our God. This word for God means the creator, for our purpose. The creator of all being. That's this name represents. And listen, the creator of all being now is our God. That's only now. But Avaya in the future, when Mashiach comes, God will be one. All the world will believe in him. That's what Rashi says. Simple. That's a simple meaning. Simple meaning. This Rashi that I'm talking about, Rabbi Shlomo Yitzchaki, he only brings the simple meaning now of the sentences in the Torah. Only the simple meaning. And that's a simple meaning. right? That now God is only we Jews, we believe really, and we worship the creator of all being. But in the future, the whole world will, and they'll drop all the religions. That's our motto, because this is the truth. The fact is, God is creating everybody, and eventually everybody's going to worship only their creator. Okay, so why? What does it also mean, this language of love? How can you come to love God? Says the Rebbe even more. Every religious Jew says this twice a day. Listen, Jews, you should love God. Right? The God is our God. God is one. They say it twice a day, and you will love God. It's a promise, and we don't love God. Right? So love is an emotion. Who comes to love God? Only big tzaddikim, and that they really feel the oneness of God. That's very, very, very rare. And Jews have been saying this for thousands of years. When was the Torah given? 3,300 years ago. We've been saying this twice a day, every day. How many Jews really came to love God all the time? So now this Rebbe is going to show us how to do it. Going to show us how to do it. Also, he pointed out that, remember yesterday, the word Shma means to understand. And the word Shema also means to gather. Shema Yisroel means understand. Jews, understand. What are we supposed to understand? That Hashem, the creator of the universe, he's our God. What does it mean he's our God? He's our life. He's our power. And the whole world is going to believe it. How is the whole world going to believe? How are we going to force the whole world to believe it in our God? How is that going to be? I mean, how many Jews are there? How are we going to force them? Right? We're going to have some sort of secret weapon, and they're not going to really love. If you force it, put a gun to somebody's head and say, okay, now love potatoes, right? He's going to say, okay, and he'll pretend, oh, I love potatoes, even he hates potatoes, right? Like the kids, eat your spinach, love the spinach, enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. I'll hit you if you don't enjoy the spinach. Oh, yes, I love this. He doesn't love spinach. What do you want from him? What everybody's going to love God. How are they going to love God? So it says, very simple. You have to love life. If you love life, then you'll love God. So the Rebbe asks this very simple question. That makes even less sense. People who love life, they want to have a good time. And God is restricting. The Torah restricts a person. You love life, you want to now be free. Born to be free, just do whatever you want. That's loving life. So the Rebbe says there's two types of life. There's two types of life. But it's life. It's not some religious concept. It's life itself. Just like every normal person wants to live. Every normal person wants to live. People that get sick, they get depressed, they get confused, they get whatever it is God forbid, they'll try to put an end to their life. But only a sick person would do a thing like that. A person that's lost hope. But there's always hope. There's always future. There's always life. Right? So people get confused. So, but life, everybody loves life. He says, what's the idea of life? He says, what do you mean? Look at all the advertisements. Look at any magazine, life. People sitting in an open convertible, what is the wind blowing through their hair, or they're in Bermuda, and they're half naked, doing 99% naked, on the setting sun, so that's life, right? You're sitting on the Riviera or something, drinking wine, and then that's like, what difference does it make if the wine is kosher, or what day it is, if it's Shabbos or not? Do you have a good time? That's life, says the Rebbe. There's two types of life. There's created life, and there's the creator's life. And when it says that you should choose life, that's what's called good, the creator's life. After all, everything is being created, right? So it says that's what it means to choose life. You choose life, you choose life, then you'll come to love God, because God is the source of all life. That's the creator's life. And everyone's partaking of it. We're all being created. Huh? That's what it means you should choose life. Okay. But the point of the matter is, that loving God doesn't mean some religious concept. That's why there's a lot of people that say Judaism is not a religion, right? And religion. I mean, it's just a sentence made to sort of shock you a little bit, because of course Judaism is a religion, but it's not a religion in the sense of any other religion. The sense of any other religion whatsoever. right? It's not to prove that we were here first and that we were this and that, right? Okay, that's also religion, but the essence of Judaism is not that it's a religion. The essence of Judaism is that it's life. Instead, it's life. And the same thing as a person that's alive. The essence of a person being alive is that he's alive. And then that expresses itself in the person's personality and in his talents and his abilities, and that he has arms, he's got legs, he's got this, that. But the fact of the matter is, a person without, God forbid, without arms and without legs, is still a person. Right? A person that's a very stupid person is still a person. A person with no talents whatsoever, he's still a person. It's like that. And in Germany, the Nazis, they used to kill people that were a little bit, people that had Down syndrome or something, because they're not, practical like everybody else. They paid attention only to the external, but the internal, everybody's alive, a living person. It makes not that much difference what the qualities, what the abilities of the person is. Just you have to pay more attention to the person that's got disabilities. You have to watch out it doesn't run on the street, or sometimes you have to feed him. Right? You have to take care of the person, but the person is alive. Life itself is a precious thing. And here we're talking about the source of life. The source of life. So that, Rabbi, that's really the whole idea of going to heaven. Going to heaven, you start to feel the source of life. Suddenly you realize that you don't really die. Right? The external life dies, but the internal life does not die. It says when you start loving God, God is the source of both types of life. Both the internal life, your soul, and the external life of your body. And that's why we should be saying Shma Yisroel. That's what it means you'll come to love God. Oh, so that's good. It says so first of all, there's the oneness of God. And then afterwards come all these details about God. That God made the world. On the first day, he made light. On the second day, he made a division. Remember, we talked about the division between the upper waters and the lower waters. Here we go. So God is one, but God made a world that's very, very, how do you say, divided. It's not the right word, but so the world is pure division. Everything that exists because it's different from something else. It's divided off. Everything has its boundaries, its definition. Huh? Amoebas are not giraffes. Giraffes are not angels. Angels are not planets. Planets are not galaxies. All these things have their definition, what they are and what they aren't, right? What they aren't. But God doesn't have a definition of what he is. God has a definition of what he's not. But what to define God, what he is, you can define what God does. He creates, he enlivens, it this. But what is God himself, the essence of God? We can always say God is not limited. God is not like us. God is not comprehensible. We can't understand what God is. But God is not a person. He's not a spirit. He's not. So that's what it means. God is one. That God creates all being constantly. There's nothing that can define God. God is above all definition. He's not an existence like any other existence is. But on the other hand, God creates all this diversified existence. On the first day of creation, it says in the Torah, first of all, he created time. He created time. By God, there's no time. Time is a creation. That's why it makes no sense to say, what was there before the world was created? Was there before? Before the world was created, there was no such thing as before and after. There was no time. We can't understand what this means. Because we live in this little sort of, how do you say, the small-minded, one-dimensional, zero-dimensional world, whatever it's called. One-dimensional, I guess. Okay, so all of a sudden God starts dividing. When God creates, so he starts dividing. Time. On the first day, he creates light. Oh, that's something separate from God. God's light. On the second day, he makes a division. Like it says, and with God's goodness, he creates everything constantly, tamid. That's what Chassidut points out, that God is creating everything constantly. Why? Because everything really is nothing. Everything is made from nothing. You're made from nothing. I'm made from nothing. Everything is made from nothing. If so, how can I be talking to you? What are we talking about? Because God is creating us to be something. So everything in the world is a miracle. Everything that exists is an amazing miracle. That's what it means. God is creating everything constantly. Nice and gracious. Okay, so the world, therefore, the world cannot really contradict God. It can't really contradict God. The world can, even though it does a really good job of doing so. And that's what God wanted. But he put us in the middle of this whole battleground so that we should make the right choice. That's what it means. On one hand, the world is confusing us, it's pulling us. You have these classic cases throughout Judaism of, Abraham being thrown into the fiery furnace because he refused to deny the oneness of God. But he was supposed to bow down to Nimrod or whatever it was, and he refused. And so he got thrown into a fiery furnace, Abraham. And he came out unscathed. So here that's a pretty good example, right? What did Nimrod have? Nimrod was a king, and he controlled the whole world. So he had basically the power of life and death, but only life and death physical. So he said to Abraham, worship me, and I'll let you live. So if Abraham was smart, he would have said, okay, this idiot, all he wants is I should bow down to him. I'll bow down and then I'll do what I want. Abraham said, no way, I'm not even for one instant going to deny the truth. Why? Because every instant is being created by the truth, by God, the one God. I'm not going to deny that for myself. So here we have the battle between the lower life and the upper life, the battle between the creator and the creation. Nimrod rules over the creation, and God rules over God is the creator. Nimrod doesn't rule over him. The same exact thing we saw. I mean, there's been through the generations, it's been that way. But we have the Hasidim of the previous Rebbe in Russia. And of course, they drew their power from the Rebbe himself. He was the example. That Stalin ruled over basically the whole world they had. Russia was the whole world. They couldn't go out of Russia. That was the boundaries of the world were the boundaries of Russia to those people that were inside. That's it. You couldn't go out now. It was like falling off the edge of the earth. There was no such thing as leaving Russia. So they were stuck. And Stalin was the absolute ruler. And Stalin told the Hasidim that to stop the spreading Judaism, to stop teaching Jewish children, to stop providing mikvahs for women, etc. And they refused. And a lot of them were killed. And why were they killed? Because they wanted to go to heaven. They didn't want to go to heaven. Exactly the opposite. If they wanted to go to heaven, they would keep a low profile. And when they got free, somehow or other, they would teach quietly. You could teach in your home. It was permissible for you to teach your children. So they could teach one or two. No, he had to spread his Hasidim out all over the Russia, and they taught, groups of 10 children at a time, strange children, Jewish children. And he defied Stalin. They put him, they sentenced him to death, and he refused to in any way to surrender any one of his principles. And the previous Rebbe was just an example. Jews have been doing that since Abraham. The whole essence of Abraham is the self-sacrifice. And what's self-sacrifice? The war between the creator and the creation. Who's going to win? And the job of the Jews is to show that it's really only one thing. The creation can't really go against the creator. Not really. But God created it in such a way that it can. Okay. So this battle has to be fought in each one of us every day, every moment. God is creating the world. The world apparently is an enemy of God, of the creator. And it's not. God put us in this world so that we should see through the bluff. The world is just bluffing us. We should see through it, and that we should reveal the oneness of God. That's what it means. Shema is Hashem Echad, that God is one. Okay. Indian is like this. Shabakol Yom, every day, Mitkale is revealed. Dvar Yom Biyomo, in the details of every day in that day. 1 minute. Huh? Do this. Hainu, bechinas osios v'dibor, the letters and the words of God, animshach bechinas hamida, that aspect of God's aspect of that day. There are 7 days, and each one reveals another one of God's 7 emotions. We've talked about the 10 sfirot, that man is made in the image of God, that man has 10 aspects of personality, 10 aspects of life. 3 of them are intellect, chachma, bina, dat, and 7 of them are emotions. And that's why God created the world in 7 days, to reveal another emotion. Because if you think about it 1 second, we've talked about this also a lot of times, but I'll mention it again. There's the big scientists and all the other people that say the world is 5 billion years old. It's 10 billion years old. It's 100 billion years old. It's 10 trillion years old. Other scientists, I'll say you 10 trillion and I'll raise you 20 trillion, 30 trillion years old, 90 trillion years old. The world is 50 quadrillion light years old. It's the oldest world. There's no other worlds. There's what is it called? What is it? This worlds that are going on with our world. I can't think of the word. There's other worlds. There's other eons. There's other this. There's other this. Okay, it says Judaism. No, listen, it's not. Doesn't go that way. God created the world. The world is a creation. God created something from nothing. How long does it take to create something from nothing? How long does it take? Makes no sense. What do you mean? How long does it take to take something? What do you create something from if you start out with nothing? You got nothing. Well, you can't. Well, you take a bulldozer. There's no bulldozers. You take angels. There's no angels. Energy. No black holes. No nothing. How do you make something from nothing? How do you do it? So you can't do it. It's impossible. You can't take nothing. We don't know what nothing is. What is nothing? Nothing. It's not a vacuum. It's not spirit. It's not emptiness. It's not. What is nothing? Before God created the world, there was no thing. There was nothing whatsoever. There was also no time. Now, how long does it take to make from no time until time starts? Right? This makes absolutely no sense. Well, before time started, so there was no time. So, in other words, how long does it take to create a whole universe? Right? How long does it take to create a real universe? No time at all. God created the whole thing in 1 second. So the question is exactly the opposite of what the scientists say. What do the scientists say? Couldn't be that the world was created in 7 days. Couldn't be that the world is only 5,700 years old. Couldn't be. The question is not how could the world be so young? How could it be created in such a short amount of time? Why did it take such a long time? If we really believe that there's God and that God created the whole business, so he could have created the whole business in 1 instant. Not even in 1 instant. Before God created the world, there was no such thing as an instant. Time began when God created the world. So if God could start creating the world, and before that there was nothing, so obviously it took no time to create the world. No, Torah says no, it took 7 days. So of course there's rabbis that say 7 days is because there's a time warp. There's light, according to Einstein, that gravity has an effect on time. So maybe there's a time warp. And so therefore, when it says 7 days, it means 7 periods of trillion years, maybe billion years. So, that really doesn't answer anything. The question is, if God could create something from nothing, and that's what we believe, so why does the Torah say it takes 7 days? So the answer is that it makes no sense, but God created the world according to his emotions. 7 days, each day reveals another emotion of God. Why is a day 24 hours long and a minute is 60 minutes? That's explained. There's a book called the Sefer Yetzirah, and it says that it goes according to the secret of the 12 letters of the 22 letters of the alphabet, and the 3 longs and the 3 3 mothers and 7 doubles and 10 simples. The letters anyway. It talks over there how to do it. And if you think this book of Sefer Yetzirah is simple, as Rabbah used to be able to use it, and also the Maharal of Prague to create people. He created a human being with this book. Don't try it at home, but you could. Okay, so the world could have been created in no time at all. whatsoever. And God took 7 days. Why? Because the world is an expression of God's emotions. And that's why it repeats every week. We repeat 7-day week. Because it's an expression of God's emotions, whether people know it or they don't know it. I think everywhere in the world, they keep a 7-day week. I think so. I have a friend that he went to Japan, and there they don't know anything about the Western civilization. He went to some place, and they worked for 6 days, and the 7th day they rested. They rested. Napoleon, for a while, he tried to make a 10-day week. He wanted to say that he's God or something. 10-day week. It didn't work. 7 days. Somehow 7 is implanted in the fiber of reality, of time. Okay, so it says the first day is God's kindness. The second day is Rakia, that's God's severity. Shabbat, everything goes back up to its source, just like it was. That's Shabbat, means to return. Kamashal Adam, like a person that he thinks or he speaks, and when he finishes speaking or thinking, everything goes back to its source. Or usually the example brought in Chassidus is doing. An artist that draws a beautiful picture, he spends a month drawing a picture and he puts his energy into it. And when he finishes, he sits back and he looks at it. Oh, it gives him a pleasure. All the energy that he put into it comes back. That's the same thing, Shabbat. So it also, by God, is the same thing. Nikra Shabbat, it's called a Shabbat. Shabbat means Shav, means to return. L'Hashem Elokecha, to your God. Upirish, what does it mean? Yisroel. That's what it means. Shma. So, 1 minute. Okay, that's what it means. Shma Yisroel. Shma means to think. What are we supposed to think about? So the Rebbe just gave us a whole list of things to think about. That this world is a creation, and every day is another expression of God's emotions, and that the world is created by God's thought and God's speech. And the world seems to oppose the Creator, but really it's just one thing. That's what we're supposed to Shema, think about. What is Yisroel? Shema Yisroel. Yisroel is the Jewish people. The Jewish people, Allah b'machshava, they rose up in God's thought. The Jewish people rose up in God's thought. The world is created from God's word. The word and but Jewish people, the Jews, and the Jewish soul, that came from God's thought. When a person thinks Hashem Elokeinu, that God is our God, Shashem Yudke Vavke, that, like I said, is the creator. How does God create? He creates by a process which is represented by the 4 letters of God's name. The first letter of God's name is Yud. And then afterwards comes a Hey, and then comes a Vav, and then comes a Hey. So the Yud, that's Tzimtzum. Yud is the smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It's just a little dot. It doesn't really have to have any size. A little dot, that's a Yud. Then the letter Hey is Hispashtus. That from that little dot, which is God's original, how to say, his original creative power, but it's being prepared. Contracting God's infiniteness. God, he does this thing of contract, like a person, you hire a contractor, right? You want to build a house, anything is possible. You hire a contractor, he gets an idea how to do it, what do they call a contract? What's adrichal? Anyway, so and he gets a person that knows how to plan. He makes a little plan. That's the tzimtzum. Makes a plan. I got an idea. Then after that, he writes the idea down. His pashtus, it spreads out. And then afterwards, hamshacha, it comes down to reality. Right, same thing. You get an architect. The architect, he gets idea. I have an idea how to do it, and then he sits and he thinks and he makes the idea. He widens it out, puts the plans down. That's like chachma and bina. Chachma is the original idea. His pashtus, that's the plans. Hamshacha means he starts to put the plans into action. He gets everybody together. That's the emotions being revealed. He gets everyone together, all the workers, all the planners, all the diggers, all the builders, all the electricians, and the people with the plumbers and that. And then the last, hey, that's actually doing it. That's what God did. That's the plan and the original idea, the thought and the plan and the action that brought to the creation of the world. And this is happening constantly. It's happening constantly. This Yud Kei Vav Kei, that's the creator of the world. He is Elokeinu. He is, what does it mean? Our power. That's the thought. We said the Jews rose in God's thought. That's this upper thought becomes Hisavos that creates the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they were drawn from God's thought. So here we have another reason for hating the Jewish people, because they're different. The Jewish, whether they know it or not, whether they believe it or not, Jewish people are different. The whole rest of the world is created from God's speech, and the Jews somehow or other come from God's thought. That's what it means that we're the sons of God. It explains in the Tanya, the second chapter. So when a Jew starts to think, one second, I'm connected to the Creator. I have a message for the whole creation. I'm the plug that plugs in this amazing computer that's called the world with all the people in it. I'm the plug. The Jewish people, they have to plug into God's thought. So it says, therefore, the Jewish people, they come from God's thought, that this is much higher than this. Machshavilo, this is higher than what it says in the end, Hashem Echad. So what do we say? Listen, Jews, God is our God. That's God's thought. And in the end, God is one. What does it mean that God is one? That's already the world. Echad is the world. How God is one. When we say that God is one, we imply that there could be number two. And we're saying there is no number two. Where do we think that there is a number two? That there's something other than God in the world? Not only that, it says the letters Echad stand for the unity of God in this world. Aleph is one, God's one. It says Chet are the seven heavens and the earth. It's 8. Chet is 8. And Dalet are the 4 directions of the world: north, east, south, west. And so Chet is sort of like up and down, like all the up and Dalet is all the 4 directions: front, back, right, and left. So that's the world. God is one in the world. So Shma Yisroel, that's God's thought. And God is one, that's God's action. So that it will be God's speech, that from this comes all of the 7 heavens, like we said before, the letter Chet, and the earth, 7 heavens, and the earth, that's 8, and the 4 directions of the world. And near Mazim, that this is hinted at in the Chet and the Daled of the word Echad. Okay, so that's how God made the world, right? That's how God made the world. God made the world in such a way. This is like almost explaining, want to call it, there's nuclear physics and there's regular physics, and this is talking about God physics. That's the way things are, right? When Newton tried to explain what the gravity is, he didn't say, well, why is there gravity at all? Why does there have to be gravity at all? Why is it that every time I throw something up, it comes down? You know, let's change that. I think that should be changed. He never thought of a thing like that. He was explaining what nature is. He was trying to explain what nature is. Every mass draws every other mass, something like that. But he wasn't saying that who says it's that way? Who says it has to be that way? The things fall down. Maybe they don't fall down. He explained, he discovered things. Let's put it that way. He discovered things. It's the same thing with us. The fact of the matter is God created a world. The fact of the matter is that God created a world from his speech. The fact of the matter is that the world rose up in God's thought. The fact of the matter is that God is creating the world all the time. And the fact of the matter is we don't see any of this or feel any of it. And that's what the Jews are here for. The Jews are here for explaining to the world that it's being created constantly from God's love. How precious every human being is, because every human being is being created every instant intentionally from God. Like we said before, and that's that the world comes from God's speech, but the speech comes from God's emotions. Like we said before, that from the heart is drawn down life to speech. And also from the heart is drawn down life to the brain, to think, etc. So the Jews are like the heart of the world. And we said that God is also called the heart. This draws from God and from the Jews to God's thought, which this is higher than the world. And that's why we say 2 times God's name. Remember, we had that question. Why does it say Shma Yisroel, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad? Why does it say twice? Let's go back to that sentence again. Here we go. Back to previous page. Here it goes. Why does it say Shema Yisrael? Listen, Jews. Hashem Elokeinu, God is our God. Hashem Echad, God is one. Why 2 times God? How many gods are there? Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. So he said, why do we have to have 2 times? So he says, now we're going to explain it why. Let's go to the next page. One minute. Where do we get up to? Oh, it says, that's why it says 2 times the name of God in Shema Yisrael. Why? One is the Jewish people, and the other is for the world. Now we can understand also above. Shapiro Shavaya, that when we said that God is our God, that's talking about the Jewish people. They rose up in God's thought. This is higher than the level of drawing godliness down into his speech. From his speech, he created the world. Even the angels were also created from God's speech. It says, Miruach Piv Kol Tzavam, from the breath of God's mouth, all of the creations, all the hosts of heaven. The creation is the second name of God. The creator is the first name of God. That's God's thought. It means that when we say that God is one, the word one only applies in the world, the heavens and the earth, etc. Because this is when we say that God is one, it implies you might think that he's not one. Why would you think that God is not one? Because the world screams out that there's something else except for God. There's something other than God. There's even big rabbis that say, right? It's a big mistake. That's why Hasidut came to the world. Big rabbis that say that God is not in the world. The world is a separate thing from God. What do you want to say? God is in the toilet. God is everywhere, right? So the answer is not only God is in the toilet, God creates the toilet. God creates everything. God creates evil people. He creates the Nazis. There's nothing that God doesn't create. Everything is created from absolute nothing from God. That's called God's speech. But God's speech conceals what God is. That's the second name of God. And that's what it means that Hashem is one. What does it mean that he's one? He's in a place where you might think that he's not one. So it has to come and tell you that God is one. That's a lower aspect of God. Because him, in fact, the world is surrendered to God's oneness. God has created everything. That what it says that God is our God from the beginning of Shema Yisrael. This comes from the letter of Yachid. And there's Echad and Yachid. The word Echad means the one. The word Yachid means unique, alone. That God is alone and unique. Because the only real reality is God. It says like the Jewish people, they are special to God. God exists, but his existence is a different type of existence than any other existence. All other existence in the world, including the angels, the spiritual, is a created existence. And God's existence is a true existence. It's not created. It's not limited. It's not defined. You cannot define God's existence. God is alone. Yachid, God is special. There's nothing else in the world that is a creator except for God. And Miuchad, God is unique, totally unique. So there's nothing except for God, and there's nothing like God. Like it says there, yeah, like Jewish people, they're called God's Yechido. It says to Abraham also, Kach bincha Yechidecha. Yitzchak is called Abraham's Yechid, his special one. Shu bechinis chaya chayim, that God is the life of life, the source of all life, which is above even from the level of spiritual life. Shu bechinis ata mechayet kulam. All the heavens going to heaven, that's a lower form of life. God is the source of the whole business. Bechinis ata. And just by the way, where is the essence of God found? Right? If God is higher than this physical world, he's higher even than the spiritual worlds. So where is God found? When the Jewish people do commandments. The commandments are the essence of God's will. That's the holy temple. That's why it's such a bad thing that the temple was destroyed. That's what it means. Ata are the letters. The ata mechayet kulam. We say ata, God, mechaya, enliven everything. God, you enliven everything. The word ata, you, this is the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Aleph is the first, Taf is the last, and Hey are the 5 organs of speech. Speech. Your lip, without them, you can't speak properly, right? The letters come from speech. The lips, pit, right? Lamed, the tongue, the tongue, the palate, what is it? Tongue, what's it from the palate? I think, no, maybe, I forget. Boom, the dalit is the tongue. Lamed also. The palate, what's the palate? The palate is, I can't remember the letters. Anyway, those are the 5 organs of speech. There's the lips, the teeth, the tongue, the palate, and the throat. Is the throat. Right? The teeth are like shin. Can't say it without. Va'ata, that's the 5 organs of speech that God used to create the world. Huh? Man is made in God's image. So you can't take it too literally. I mean, God doesn't got, if you go up to the moon and turn right, you see God's tongue. But God does have a tongue. If we have a tongue, it means that God has a tongue. So God has these 5 organs of speech, and from that comes the 22 letters of the alphabet. The first is Aleph, the last is Taf. The Ata Machayat Kulam, that you means from your speech, God, you enliven everything. That's the letters of God's speech, from Aleph to Taf, and the 5 organs of speech. That's what it means that God provides for life. Mechalkel Chaim means also to make vessels, kalkel, kli, a vessel. Like it says that God is the unique, God is unique. But to be the life of the worlds, God is a king. We say that in the end of the blessing in Bruch Shamar, I'm sorry, Bruch Shamar. We say that God is Yachid. God, we say, is unique and alone. But in order to enliven the worlds, this comes from God being a king. But that's what it means. That's what it means that with you, God is the source of life. Not that you, God, are the source of life, even though, of course, God is the source of life. But what we're saying is that God is the source of life. But until it actually comes down to creating the world, there's all these different levels, just like speech. In order for a word to come out of your mouth, or a letter to come out of your mouth, there's an amazingly complicated process that comes from your soul or your will, through your brain, through your spinal cord, through your muscles and your bones and everything. An amazing coordination there has to be between your thought and in order for a word to come out of your mouth. The same thing is by God. In order for God to create the world, and He's creating it constantly, is there has to be a whole long process, which is, even though God is doing it, just like when I speak, it's me speaking. I don't say, no, it's my mouth speaking. I didn't lie. It was my mouth that lied. That's ridiculous, right? And God is speaking, creating the world. He is creating the world Himself. But there's a tremendously long process, and that's what it means, because with you, God is the source of life. When a person sits and thinks about this, you close the books, and you start to think, really, and then you open up the book again. Let me read this again. And you think about it deeply. Is this really relevant to me? I'm supposed to think I'm being created. Is this really I mean, possible that God is creating me, the same God that's creating the stars in the sky, He's creating everything every second. You think about it, but you'll come to the conclusion, nah, it can't be. But if the Rebbe says that, maybe it is. Maybe I should think about this again. And after you think about it 15, 20 times, then you start to think, listen, maybe it could be. But it's a whole different idea than any other idea that I've ever had in my life. And then you start to realize that Hashem is Elokeinu. That's the Yachid. The oneness of God becomes ours. Mamash, like it says, Achat hi yonatai. One is my dove. This is King Solomon says. Achat hi, one. What does it mean? Masha neshama, that which is soul, is called Yechida because it receives from this level of Yechid. So this is especially talking to the Jews, but it's relevant to all mankind. But the Jews have this special connection. That's what it means. You will love God. By means of thinking about this, so automatically you come to love God. You wake up inside of yourself, right? A Jew wakes up inside of himself, this thought of God, where he comes from. You come automatically, with all of your heart. This is the level of Yechida, which is of your soul. And all the spark of what a human being is, so to speak, that's what it means. Yisroel, the Jewish people, rose up in God's thought. That's what it means. Shma Yisroel. The word Shma means think. So here we have a commandment in the Torah to think about God. In Chabad Hasidut, all the Rebbe's of Chabad, they enable the world to do this commandment. Thinking about God, what to think about, to the point where you come to love God. It becomes an emotion. Emotion, love. It's not just a philosophical thoughts and ideas, and you can write books about it. It becomes something, a personal, intimate relationship between you and your Creator. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. Now let's do the Dabar Malchut.